So next up, we have a company that you probably know working in the AI space. And it's always good to see these companies who are really out on the cutting edge of technology, working with you to improve your systems. But how they use the work you do at RESO is sort of foundational training material for the new and innovative products that they can bring to us. So we're going to bring up Domink Pogorzelski of Restb.ai.
You hear that? This house, it's talking. From photos, smart home devices, social media tags, permit data, this house is broadcasting an endless stream of signals. The question is, are we listening? Good morning, everybody. My name is Dominic, or Dom for short. I am the president of the MLS division at Restb.ai. And it's my absolute pleasure to be here today to maybe provoke some thoughts around how AI can really unlock what I'd like to call property intelligence, and how RESO can be the language it can speak to do so. So today, I'd like to start by maybe quickly doing a little overview of the current reality and some of the challenges that we're seeing. Then dive into how AI can be used as a tool to be the, let's call it, universal translator of vast, complex, and unstructured data, and how MLSs, if properly done, can be positioned to be these, let's call them orchestrators of this data or data. Is it data or data? All right, hold on. I've been told I can have a bit of an accent, so forgive me for this. But so, if you say data, raise your hand. No, nobody? If you say data, raise your hand. Okay, so it's a Canadian thing, I get it. Okay, so we'll go with data. All right, so let's jump into it. Where are we right now with the market? You know, for better or for worse, I'd say the market here has a very good foundation, right? You got the agents on one side who create listings, they bring in market insights, you know, expertise, a human touch to the listings. You got the MLSs on the other side who centralize all this data, who, you know, ensure data integrity, compliance. And you have RESO, who kind of makes sure we're all speaking the same language so we all understand each other. And that's great. And this creates this very good structured MLS data world, right? The problem is these properties are swimming in this whole universe of untapped data. You got all the visual intelligence that's out there, the photos, the videos, but also the floor plan scans, drone footage, satellite imagery. You have property history, permit data, renovations, IoT sensors, and smart home devices who are just broadcasting information about the home. You have environmental data, flood zone risks, wildfire risks, noise level, air quality, all this information that speaks to the house in specifics, and social and behavioral data. What are people saying in and around the house? What's the life inside of this house? What's the life outside of this house? All this data is out there. But the problem, a lot of it is not making its way to the MLS. There's a lot of reasons for it. I think one of the challenges behind that is that right now, in many ways, the data that comes into the MLSs is kind of constrained by the limit of an agent or an admin broker or somebody going in and inputting this data manually. But you have all this other data that's vast, complex, and unstructured, and oftentimes siloed, that's out there. And it's almost unfair to put the burden of ingesting this data on an agent or a broker admin. And this is where I think AI can really come in as a really good tool to tackle that situation. So as I mentioned, we have photos, sensors, videos, social media, all these different buckets of information that's unstructured, vast, complex. And that is something that AI is uniquely good at sifting through, at understanding, all right, what are the patterns that I'm seeing? How can I take all this data and translate it into something a little more digestible? Through tools like computer vision, LLMs, data fusion models. Now, this is not just one tool, but can we start building out these different tools that can really start taking this data, and then if it speaks the same language, which I think RESO is very uniquely positioned to come in and kind of take up the helm here, we can then start ingesting this maybe a bit more at-scale data into the MLSs. Now, I'm in no way saying that this should replace the agent. Not at all. Quite the opposite, actually. I still think there's a lot of value in having that, manual input, having the agent come in, input, create the listing, put in the, all of its insights and human thoughts into it, into what I'd call now the traditional data layer. But should we start thinking about carving out maybe a separate database or part of the database that is specific to AI-derived data? Because there are some nuances between the two, not only on the input side, but also maybe on the output side. Maybe that data that's now been derived by AI needs to be displayed differently or used differently. So should we start thinking about maybe introducing this into some of the infrastructures? Now, I spoke about how, if we teach AI to speak RESO, then that can really make things more efficient, effective in ingesting this data in a very uniform way into the MLSs. But to do so, I think RESO has to also understand AI. What do I mean by this? Is there a world where we need to start thinking of how does RESO become more AI-friendly? Now, I don't have the answers to this. It's something I'm sure the R&D group is thinking about, discussing. But from experience, I can tell that there are certain nuances to AI data. For example, how do we want to standardize, levels of confidence? How do we want to look at probability scores from AI? Do we need to start tracking different data provenance? Was this data derived from photos? Was it derived from environmental data? Also, how do we want to handle ambiguity, inaccuracy? AI is not and will not be 100% perfect. Neither are human beings. So there is always this level of ambiguity that we need to kind of understand and be comfortable with. And once we have kind of building out this infrastructure, then we can really start looking at creating some AI-driven, real estate insights at scale. And I think this is an important word, at scale. So how can the MLS kind of really position itself to become what I like to call the orchestrator of this property intelligence? As you know, the MLS oftentimes kind of sits in the middle of a lot of these data flows, right? So on the input side, my thoughts would be, let's continue having this manual input coming from agents that speaks to agent-declared data. Sorry, it's a tough accent to break through. Is there then another input layer that needs to be maybe specific to AI-derived data? Ideally, both speaking RESO, ingested into the database, so that then on the output side, you can continue having your traditional outputs the same way you're doing it now, but then also you can start empowering some AI-driven outputs at scale. What do I mean by this? Again, I don't have the answers of what this might look like, where this is exactly going to go, what can we do. So disclaimer, this is in no way things that I'm saying I can do today, but let me just throw around some ideas just to jog your imagination a little bit, right? With all this data being ingested into the MLS and AI algorithms running to kind of create some patterns and algorithms, what if we had a tool then called market velocity indicator? Something that looks at real-time dynamic demand, inventory levels, features of a home, and it can then predict the days on market for a property. Or what if we had something called style DNA? An AI that not just looks at the style of a home, but goes even as far as saying, yeah, those fixtures are pretty well aligned with the mid-century aesthetics of this home, which make this home very unique in its own market. Or maybe something called the living timeline, where the AI looks at the whole history of a home and creates a very easily digestible timeline of the home. It was built in 2005, a pool was added in 2008, renovations happened in 2017, data, air quality improved between, or degraded depending on where you are, from this year to this year. Or maybe something called listing highlights, something that we're dabbling with at Restb.ai, where the AI not only looks at the features of a home, but then also looks at the features of all the homes surrounding that house, and is then able to pick out those 2 or 3 features that really make this home pop. Or something called the renovation ROI. The AI looks at the condition of a kitchen, says, hey, right now you're, let's call it a C3, if you want to follow the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac standards, you're a C3, but if you renovate the kitchen with these materials, using these contractors, it'll cost you $50K, but then you can resell it for $100K more. All this data is available out there. Or last but not least, something maybe called AI-detected features, where the AI can kind of scan and go through all the features of a home without necessarily having to, for the agent to validate it, so that data can then be used in new ways of searching or building some sort of, search. For example, the search tool that we saw yesterday, that was like natural language search. Well, all these tools, all these kind of new ways of creating experiences require data, and the more data they have, the better the experience can be, right? So, how do we get there? I don't think that there's no way that this will happen overnight, right? It's a journey. There's a path. It's an iterative process. Things will go wrong, and maybe some things will be a little harder to get off the ground. There'll be, a couple of hurdles here and there, but it's a path we need to, I believe, embark on. And I don't have the timelines for this. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not going to go up there and give out some timelines. But at least I think there's a couple of phases that we can break this down into. And the first phase, I would call it, let's say, foundational AI integration, where we can already now start thinking about how do we build maybe this AI layer infrastructure? What tools can we integrate that can, bring in that extra data into the MLS? Can we start delivering some first-gen AI-driven outputs The next phase could maybe be called data enrichment and early orchestration. How do we incorporate new AI feeds, IoT devices, environmental data? Just yesterday, I met a company at the cocktail called Rainplan, who are talking about environmental data and structuring it and bringing it to the table. Let's engage in those conversations. How do we start talking about making RESO AI friendly as well? Confidence scores, probability scores, which data gets to be used for training or not? Can we start looking at some early orchestration capabilities? Listing highlights, for example, is one of the examples I spoke about before. And then phase 3 would be something maybe called dynamic intelligence and full orchestration, where the MLS could really be in the middle and manage these dynamic, multi-source data streams, where it could leverage fully evolved RESO standards, where it could really start delivering these, more sophisticated orchestrated capabilities, market velocity indicator or living timelines or whatever other thing we come up with as an industry, in the future. And again, I don't think this will happen overnight, but it'll be a journey that's going to have hardships and maybe some failures here and there, but that's the path to innovation, right? So I'd like to leave you with one last thought. Being in AI, I'm often asked, hey, Dom, do you think agents are going away? I genuinely think the answer is no. A clear example, a few weeks ago, I put the condo that I own with my ex-wife, I put it up in the market. And even me, with all these AI tools falling on my pockets, I was happy and ecstatic to have an agent in my corner supporting me through my journey. So no, I don't think agents are going away. However, if in 5 years' time, agents are doing things the same way they're doing it today, then we, as an industry, have failed them. So be bold, take risks, and be the orchestrators that empower future-ready agents. Thank you.